Are you recording as well?
Yes.
Really loud.
Okay. Hey everybody, welcome to the Haverhill Town Council meeting on Monday the 16th of December 2024. So we'll start. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Town Council and where possible live on YouTube. Please do note that the recording device is sensitive and live stream may be recorded by third parties. So do not say anything you do not want recorded. If necessary, I will direct all recording in the room and the live stream to be stopped. But generally, I want to avoid doing that. So we will normally record everything except any item taken in closed session. Members of the public may also make their own recordings, but must follow our rules for doing so, including stopping recording when requested. Whilst we do not accept anonymous speaking at the public forum, members of the public who wish to speak but do not want their name published must please indicate this before saying your piece. Thank you. Right, so item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence.
Yeah, we have apologies from Councillor Brown and Councillor Lucarini, who may make it to the meeting in the end, but they're both delayed. We have apologies from Councillor Cox, Councillor Crooks, Councillor Davison, Councillor Furman, Councillor Martin, Councillor Miller-Jones, and also Councillors David Roach and Heike Sauer from the County Council.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is declaration of interest and request for dispensations for members to declare any interest they may have on items on the agenda and agree any dispensations to stay. A, disclosable pecuniary interest, B, other registrable interest, and C, non-registrable interest. How many? That's enough, thank you. Item 3 is the minutes of the meetings of the Town Council held on the 25th of November 2024, and to confirm that they are a true record. So, we have a proposer. Councillor Brown Burns, second Councillor Stinchkin. Those in favour? Carol, thank you. Should we go through the actions on the minutes then? Let's scroll down please. 1, resolved, 2, 3. Councillor Mason. I think that's been sorted. Yeah. Sorry. The SEM provision.
Yeah, just a slight misunderstanding between us, but I hope you've got the report.
Yeah. Thank you. And again, that's again about the sharp spin. I think that's been the sharp spins. That's been addressed, hasn't it?
Yeah, my latest understanding is that the pharmacy on Camps Road is taking sharps. And it's not uncommon, for example, Newmarket, I think, has one pharmacy that takes sharps. And so what we need to do is get the message out there that that I forgot the name of that pharmacy.
Haverhill Pharmacy.
Oh, it's Haverhill Pharmacy. It's easy to remember that. But so we need to get the message out there for anybody who's concerned.
Yeah, thank you. I think you were covering the same point there.
Was it agenda items next one?
Yeah, the next one's agenda items, so we'll cover that later, so those items are resolved.
Does it really say on
resolved? Okay, that's probably it, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Item 4 is the, what's that item that we can talk about, is the Haverhill future healthcare provision, discuss the healthcare facilities detailed in planning and master plans for the new developments. And to raise from Nick Timothy, MP, that the principal development is secured through these documents but there is no obligation on the public bodies accepting related S106 payments to fulfil the provisions detailed in the master plan. So, go on, is there anything you wanted to?
No, this was raised by Mr Pinnock, and you asked for it to be an agenda item, and I think most of you will be well aware of it, but obviously Centre Councillors discuss what they want to do.
Any comments?
Yeah, I raised this because obviously it's all to do about the local centre being built, or the first of the local centres being built, I'll rephrase that. During the master plan process, which I was heavily involved in, originally the planners only wanted 2 years from spade in the ground to the NHS confirming they wanted the land. I asked for 10 and they settled on 5 years. We're coming up not far off that now. And the NHS have told the applicants that they have no intention of taking up that land for any health facilities, although I mentioned last time the applicant has already said to me that they're very keen to provide such facilities, even if it's informal, like a bit like a community room or something. But as I said last time, the trouble with these S106 payments is a lot of them are never guaranteed. It's like library contributions. Yeah, great, library doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be spent on Haverhill Library. It goes to county council, it goes into their big treasury pot, and they can do what they like with it. Same with the NHS. And I guess it will go to what's now the ICB. Of course, it wasn't that before. Which doesn't, Haverhill is only one little part of that ICB now.
It's massive.
Massive. So I have no. So I think certainly raising it with Nick Timothy, for him to ask some questions at a higher level, it would be very good.
Mr. Stinchcombe?
Thank you, Chair. The way that paragraph is worded at the moment, it sounds like we want to raise with Nick Timothy not only what Councillor Burns has just said, but the fact that there is no obligation. Was that the original way to read
Yeah,
that sentence?
the discussion was about the infrastructure that people are promised, and as people moved on to the Persimmon estate with their small children, so their small
Thinking
children...
at least there'd be a surgery across the road?
Well,
maybe.
or a school.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
well, they won't be primary school children by the time the school is ever built. We've heard that the NHS, they draw a picture, a nice shiny picture of happy people standing on a sunny day outside this nice sketch of a health centre and how wonderful it's going to be. And everyone says in that case, we'll give it outline planning permission and the principal development's established. And then when it actually comes to the infrastructure that we get promised again and again and again, it's not going to happen. Developers aren't going to do it, and then it turns out the NHS aren't going to do it either. So what price was that drawing that everyone was shown so you vote in favour of it? What's the point of a outline master plan that isn't in any way binding on anybody whatsoever? What's the principle of the discussion we've talked about?
And
Don't heal people, do they? Principal developments.
I was tempted to say that would be a pretty tall order for Nick Timothy to go away and pose to government, wouldn't it? That actually, we need fresh legislation to impose an obligation. But the range of time here is quite massive, isn't it? I mean, it's not decades, but it's years. And in a way, what public body is going to want its hands tied 5 or 10 years ahead? It's a bit of an ask, isn't it? But that's not to say we couldn't ask Nick Timothy to have a word with the ICB or the surgeries themselves, our existing practices.
Councillor Burns.
Yeah, I was going to come back on a couple of things. One is, I think, asking him, as you said, is to find out from the ICB the rationale for not doing it. They may have a very good rationale, say, oh, we're going to do something in the centre of town. That's fine, but that's not what the master plan says. And the other thing is, I think it's worthwhile in history, for those of you who can remember, Hantwick Village also had NHS facilities proposed. And then what happened is, County Council and St Edmundsbury at that time renegated on that, and basically forgot about it for 10 years, and it got handed back to the developer, who then promptly built flats on it. So it never happened. You know, we've got evidence of it happening before, so I think that's worthwhile remembering that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, I wasn't know that myself. But Councillor Mason.
Just picking up on something Councillor Byrne said about the libraries. I'm more than happy to represent concerns if we feel that the money is disappearing into a bigger pot, you know, to try and claw back some of the things in Haverhill. I mean, as a county councillor, I would see that as one of my things to try and do on behalf of the residents. It feels immoral that S106 money just disappears into some sort of NHS pot, and it feels quite unjust. I don't believe it to be accurate. County were talking about the school possibly being started in 2026. They project population rises, and I think, Colin, we were in a meeting where we saw the plans for the school.
And Persimmon have heard nothing since.
No.
I've had that conversation today.
So it's probably appropriate soon to raise that conversation again, just to see where we are on timelines, because we won't want to see a delay. You know, people move to that estate expecting the school to be built. The one public estate still is as it is. I still think there's opportunities for health centres or something to happen, but we need the NHS to commit to Haverhill. Back in 2019, and I can't remember the name of the organisation, but it was North Essex and
CCG.
yeah, and there was a report that identified Haverhill going to have a need for a new health centre, which just hasn't come about. And I'm all in favour of approaching Nick Timothy. He is our voice, whoever the MP is, they're the voice for our community. And I think it's important we also need to work hard for us to try and get the things that our residents need and deserve.
I think Councillor Collins said it does seem a bit, one of that word, a bit dishonest. You know, you sold a vision, you sold a dream, and people buy houses on the back of that, and it doesn't materialise. Yeah, so.
Yeah, this is what brings politicians into disrepute, really, is the fact that we say okay to these houses, loads and loads of houses, but there's no infrastructure, and this is the reason. You know, I wish we could tell the general public what we have to put up with as councillors when it comes to infrastructure. And you know, what we described tonight is a very good way of the frustration that we have every time. And as chair of planning, you know, it's very frustrating on that. Thank you, Chair.
So, do we want to make? Sorry, Councillor Simpson first. Sorry. I just care about calling me on.
Do you want to hear under the what I think under the bonnet? You know, detailed explanation, because I don't want to occupy this airspace unnecessarily. But the notes I made earlier have just disappeared off my screen. I just think we should bear in mind Unity Healthcare withdrew the only satellite provision that I knew it used to maintain in recent history out at Keddington, I think back in 2022, possibly. So if they can't even reach 3 miles out of town, they're very unlikely to want to volunteer to go 2/3 of the way towards Keddington out there. But as I say, there's no reason why the town council couldn't approach the practices, or Nick Timothy and the town council between us in various ways couldn't have a chat with them and see if their arms could be twisted. I think part of the problem was, if not still is, that GP practices are short of GPs relative to elsewhere in West Suffolk or the whole county or the whole ICB now. And I haven't checked the statistics for a couple of years now, so 3 years if I'm honest. So I don't actually know the current state of play, but that certainly was a reason why they were having to sort of centralise services. And under the CCG, the NHS was definitely not keen to interfere and offer discretionary funding to, which I know can happen, to recruit GPs. I think that would be really helpful, because if you can raise the number of GPs in practice, the workload per GP diminishes a bit, and it makes it easier to recruit and maintain, isn't it? If you're inviting more people to join the practice, which is not too massively, overburdened with workload, it gets progressively easier potentially. But anyway, the CCG was not interested. I think the nice lady I was talking to at the CCG said, "No, I'm not going to do that. You've got to, Haverhill patients have got to behave better." We've heard that comment before, from other voices. And the last time I sat on the planning committee and saw anything to do with Section 106 money, I can't remember what development it was for, but it was not the two major developments. I saw the CCG asking for money that they anticipated would need to improve central facilities. Now that could well be helping Haverhill family to move into the whole of Christmas Waltons, as they have now done, I don't know. But it was that kind of thing, improve the central facilities, and there's no mention then of any satellite surgeries at all. So I think that's probably, to anticipate what, if we did ask ICB, that would be the kind of thing they were saying. Well, we're putting money into the centre of Haverhill, what more do you ask for? Well, if I didn't have a car, and the bus service isn't that brilliant out at Kevington, if a GP did agree to see me, how would I get in? If I couldn't really afford a taxi, that's a bit challenging, isn't it? So I think we can all appreciate that in the background. We could ask the ICB, if it was a little bit more willing than the CCG was, to even think about different strategies, like, as I said, incentive funding to try and up the level of GPs, and then they might be more willing to send staff out to, it might not be called a satellite surgery, it might be called a community room, but if that can be made private, sufficiently private, with some kind of an ante-room where patients could sit waiting for their turn, that might still happen, I don't know. I'm not very optimistic, but certainly discussions we could have, or someone could have. But I don't think we're ever going to get back to the level of GPs we had back in 2012, relative to the size of the population. And at that stage, they could, Steeple Bumpstead patients had a surgery of their own, didn't they? They had a practice of their own back then, and Keddington definitely got served by one practice or the other. I can't remember which it was back.
Haverhill family.
It was Haverhill family, wasn't it, at that stage, and then Unity took over. So I'm not very optimistic looking out in the long term, but I think if we can recruit Nick Timothy to help us have a chat with the two practices and with the ICB, that would be worth doing. We might not get the news we're looking for, but it's worth doing.
Thanks. Councillor Mason.
I was just going to say that I don't see it unreasonable that the Town Council could ask for an update from our local GPs practices as to what provision they actually do offer in the town. I think that'll probably be helpful, because I used to kind of keep a track at the planned surgery, but it's quite some time since I've been involved with that, and I don't sit on the patient participation group anymore. I don't foresee GP numbers going back to 2012, mostly because they've changed the model of how GP practices work. I think we would all like to see more GPs, whether it would go back to those figures, because they've now got other healthcare professionals, and of course there is an encouragement for certain things for people to now go to pharmacies. The system isn't in great shape. We've got hospitals that are overcrowded, people are going straight to A&E because they can't get a GP appointment, and we desperately need not just in Haverhill, I expect in most communities, adding capacity to take pressure off frontline services, certainly at hospitals, and have things much more accessible and local to the area. And I think that falls very neatly within an MP's remit to represent the people in Haverhill, but also, of course, West Sutherland. We touched upon this discussion about infrastructure, and whilst it's not necessarily pertinent to this particular item, I'm immensely frustrated that S106 monies are not sufficient to deliver things like cycle paths. And so the amount of money that was allocated for the infrastructure plan, the cycle and travel infrastructure plan for the Persimmon site, wasn't enough to do the Toucan crossing on Haverhill Road. But Suffolk County Council is still going to go ahead with that. But all the cycle paths that were designed for Sutherland were just not the money for it. And I think it's a travesty that people are sold a vision. We're given these visualisations that take no account for the density that is actually proposed. And I think parish councils are victims sometimes of these organisations who their primary purpose is to make profit. But the planning authority and also the highways authority are complicit in under-delivering what is necessary in terms of the amount of money for the delivery of S106 projects in the infrastructure. And for me, to be honest, nothing is more important than this topic, which is health, but I think we should possibly consider broadening it with Nick, Timothy, to consider the fact that the broader infrastructure is essential, that people aren't sold a mirage of what is going to, what they end up is not going to look like what they're being shown. Thank you.
So you're saying that, they're under-delivering, but you think if they under-promised, they wouldn't get the plans through, would they? That's basically because they're not really ambitious enough. So there we go. Councillor Burns.
Right, just a bit more information because it reminded me about what the S106 actually stated. So it says it's either infrastructure building or money. You can't have both. The money was £822,840, indexed by the British Construction Industry Index, whatever that is these days. How much that is, I don't know. But 822 was in 2015, so we're 9 years later. No, 2017 I think it was. So, but it does. There is a covenant on it, which is.
Is this for Simmons? Sorry.
No, it's the Great Wilson we're talking about.
Great Wilson, right.
Because it's not on the Northwest Haverhill. So 822,000 indexed has to be paid. The first tranche of that has to be paid after 600 houses are occupied. Well, we're nowhere near that at the moment on Great Wilson. And the final tranche is at 1,200 houses. Well, the Redrow development is only 900 anyway, so we have to wait for the next part. So nothing's going to happen there. So it does say, though, it has to be spent within Haverhill. But how do you prove that? That's the problem. And we know from examples previously they haven't done that. But there is an option to transfer the land to the council. And the council has to request it, but it cannot be used for anything else other than healthcare provision any time in the future. But it can be transferred to the council. It depends whether you want to look at the money and say, right, if the money's going to be there, can we guarantee it's going to be spent on, new health centre or whatever. 0.3 hectares of land, and it will be transferred to the council for £1.
Which council?
West Suffolk.
When? Can I ask when? When that happens?
It has to be done before the 5 years is up.
Before the 5 years?
Yes.
But it's already,
If
that's
it doesn't
already
get
gone.
done, it reverts to the developer.
So, is that already gone, that 5 years?
No,
I thought it had sort of been gone.
but it's not far off it.
Ooh. Right.
Spot on.
Yeah.
So how would that work? The land would have to be left vacant. There's no point in building something random on it as a placeholder, is there? You'd have to leave the land as public open space ready for some future 20 years down the line.
Potentially, but ideally you probably wouldn't want to do that. What you'd want to do is make sure the 800,000 index, which is probably £1 million now, is actually spent somewhere in Haverhill for the benefit of Haverhill, not to finance a doctor's surgery expanding unless they're providing better facilities for the people of Haverhill.
So as a negotiating ploy, you
Correct.
Okay, you don't actually want the land, you want to
I would have
say,
said
we'll take your money away.
the land was always what happens if we don't get the money is always that, yeah.
So how much is the land, sorry, John?
0.3 hectares. But that was exactly the same thing that happened with Hampstead End.
Okay.
So, just a background there.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Right, so
Have you got this?
do we have a proposal then to contact the MP? Yeah, Councillor Burns, so contact the MP with under the terms which is on the agenda, on the agenda. Okay. Second by Councillor Handel. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much.
It also sounds like we have a second possibility of a proposal to ask our district councillors to seriously consider blah blah blah.
Yeah, we'll blah blah blah.
I don't know what the North East one says. I've got it, I can't remember what it says.
So do we want to formalise that? Because I'll propose that, blah blah blah.
What exactly are you proposing?
Councillor Stinchcombe is proposing that the district councillors speak to the Officers Act for Suffolk to
enter the fray.
Well, can I slightly not amend it, but actually speak to David Birkin at West Suffolk, who is the S106 officer. He's very good in terms of what he knows. And
So enter the phrase probably not going to mean an awful lot to historians. What exactly do you mean?
blah blah blah.
Pursue the land. Pursue the land option as a lever to see some money spent in Haverhill.
This is the land option at the Great Rules.
Yeah, I'll have to check up on North East.
That's nice.
I'll be up for a collaborative meeting with the officer and other West Suffolk members so that we provide a united front to actually raise the emphasis. So if other West Suffolk members are here, we'll be up for that. I'll be more than happy to sit in a meeting in West Suffolk House to actually kind of emphasise it rather than just it being an email ask. You know, actually let's turn it into a proper meeting.
Thank you. So you're seconding that?
Well, I'm not quite sure that's what was proposed, but well, are you asking West Suffolk Council members to arrange a meeting with the officer? I don't want to put words into your mouth.
Come on, put your words in my mouth.
Have you got those words out of Councillor mouth?
Well, I mean, at the moment you just said to pursue the land option, but I mean, how you pursue it? I mean, if you want to define a meeting,
initially through a meeting rather than just go away. And
Yeah, because we've got to find out information
Yeah.
from the relevant people.
with the Section 106 officer.
Yeah, the 106 officer, planning as well, officers.
So if you could
and
just...
on public estates, if they want to join in.
So could you just paraphrase that for all of the...
Sorry, before you do that, do you mind? I think it would be helpful to have a scope for that meeting where we give that to him in advance so he knows what we're talking about before we then have that sit down and have that ask. So is there any possibility that we could have some sort of scope created? Would you support us with that, Colin?
Yeah, we've got to get in, sorry to come in, but we've got to get in touch with relevant officers. It's only fair that we do that and give them some sort of detail of what we're asking for, because we want the 106 officer, we want the planning officer for a start. We mostly need a portfolio holder as well, in on this, so that we can give them the information and what we're talking about, you know, because we've heard some information, haven't we? That, you know, this could be something that, you know, that, to be honest, this could be something that West Suffolk could take on. It could be, but I'm not saying it will be, because it's all born if they build, you know, they want this money, this 822,000 indexed as well, isn't it, on that? But it's you know, we've got to prepare really, haven't we? But what I'm leading to, we've got to prepare the officers and us to a meeting so we can find out all the information so that we don't lose that money or that land.
Well, we need to know
That's
whether it's
important.
feasible, and if it's not, why not, basically.
Yeah,
Councillor
correct.
Smith.
I was just going to suggest that one of us, and I'm not suggesting me because I've got very little time, but one of us makes the initial contact with the officers. I mean,
Well,
what do you think of
we
that?
should do that through Colin, really.
Yeah.
Through Colin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, then, that's fine.
1.5 just on north-west, slightly different there. That was only a monetary contribution.
This is Persimmon, isn't it?
Persimmon. That was only a monetary contribution
Only.
of £348.17 times the number of dwellings under the reserved matters, however many that is. It's to pay to the Borough Council, obviously, on the occupation of the 100th dwelling to be used to facilitate the provision, fit out and equipping of the floor space of a health centre serving an area which includes the development.
100 times 348.
I'm not sure I understood that. Can you say it again?
So it's £348.17 times the number of dwellings.
£314.
£348.17 times the number of dwellings.
Which is estimated to be 1,050, which is less than what they initially...
Yeah, well that's fine. It's only under the, consented under the reserved matters, not under outline.
Okay.
So call it 1,000 for argument's sake. That's 348,000.
Yeah, going
Yeah.
together. It's a lot, is it?
And that'll be indexed as well.
That'll be indexed, yeah.
Okay. And this is 2015. It was signed, I believe. To be paid to the Borough Council on the occupation of the 100th dwelling, which we've gone over that already,
yes. Yeah.
to be used to facilitate this provision, to facilitate the provision, fit out and equipping of the floor space of a health centre serving an area which includes the development. Now they could argue, oh, what we're doing in the health centre at the moment is using that money, but nobody tells us this. Even the meetings we've been to never tell us that.
Yeah.
So slightly different.
Yeah,
I'll send you both of them.
Right, so have you got the full ordinance there?
So basically, it's a district councillors present, Twin Hatters basically, ask West Suffolk District Council to pursue land option and do that through a meeting with Section 106 officers and others regarding the Section 106 obligations being retained for Haverhill.
Can we also include the portfolio holder in that?
I just said under others, but you know, can have a portfolio.
Make sure that he or she.
Probably don't need to be officer, I think.
Yep.
Okay, so that's...
Do we wish to say that the purpose of pursuing a land option is to get make sure we know where the money is being spent within Haverhill,
Yeah.
or will that just flow out of? I think it's helpful to say that at the outset.
Oh yes, it is helpful to say that.
Yeah, leverage.
We want to
So
know.
we know how the money's being spent.
Yeah, okay, fine. So are you happy to propose that?
Thank you.
Councillor Stinchcombe proposed that, seconded by Councillor Mason. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. Item 5. No progress sections arising from it's not covered by this agenda. I think you've already covered those, haven't you?
Yes, you have both. Yes.
Yeah. 6 then is reports from district and county councillors on issues pertinent to Haverhill in a public forum. 6A is the police reports. We've had Councillor Burns put the figures through at crime statistics, so thank you very much for that. Then any comments on police matters? No. Thank you. 6B is the
Yes, one there.
It's the
Have you put an agenda out?
6B then is annual report. I'm not sure we've got anything to add since the last discussion on the annual report. Have you been leading on this? Is there anything?
I'm planning to make a freedom of information request. I haven't quite decided what best to put in it, so that when another meeting is held with the Trust is it early February? In February anyway. That not only will they be reporting to us what they think is going on, but we will be reporting to them our analysis of some relevant statistics.
Thank you. Thank you very much. 6C then is the County Council's report. Thank you, Councillor Mason, for your usual thorough reports. Is there anything you wish to add to that, or anything else you want to
I'm
raise?
happy for the report to be staying as is. I did want to offer up for potential discussion whether the council want to or not regarding the developments of today, mostly because potentially there is a time limitation on that has been set by Jim McMahon in Parliament today of mid-January for the submittal of a proposal for devolution in Suffolk. If devolution goes ahead, Suffolk County Council no longer exists. West Suffolk Council, East, Mid Suffolk, Ipswich, Town, District Council, the 5 district boroughs would no longer exist, and we would have potentially a unitary council. There are several different forms unitary councils can take. We could have 2 unitary councils in Suffolk. The advantages and disadvantages are numerous, and my main concern is that if a proposal is put forward mid-January, this parish council, and I'm thinking about people who aren't West Suffolk councillors or county councillors, but parish councillors, don't have an opportunity to raise their concerns about how they think devolution could affect. And so by raising it as a possible agenda item, I'm just kind of inviting, because I will be sitting in meetings, I'm sure West Suffolk Council members will be sitting in meetings, but as I'm saying, we won't be meeting again. In fact, as District Council, we're meeting tomorrow, and probably wouldn't meet again as a council before that proposal goes forward. So there's very, very limited opportunities just to list some concerns that people may have, or talk about with excitement the advantages of going unitary. And so I know, Colin, you've done a lot of work on this before, whether there's anything that you might want to do in terms of help setting the scene as to what you think unitary means. And then just, Chair, if you don't mind just giving it an open forum, and I'm very much in listening mode. Thank you.
I always think that major legislation is best done at a canter. I think it's ludicrous. There are counties up and down the land who are saying, "Oh, let's get going because we can avoid the election if we and go for devolution." As Councillor Mason says, it should be a long and considered discussion, and people have a chance to have their say, because it's about how the people of Suffolk are governed for the next 30, 40 years.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, fills me with the same trepidation as it does Councillor Mason, and I think quite a few others here. A larger council means that the people of this town, lose their voice. They're going to have councillors covering much larger areas. Obviously, we don't know the nuts and bolts of this yet, but it's bad enough as it is. We've got councillors, and bless their hearts, they try their best, but you've got councillors from Brandon deciding on planning issues in Haverhill. they very rarely come here. You know, and to be fair, they've got no real skin in the game either. You know, they're not voted on by by Haverhill residents. So, you know, that does really concern me. So, I mean, it sounds to me as if you know, whatever happens, there's going to be some sort of unitary. I think the best thing, you know, for the residents of Haverhill would be that you know, it's an east and west, because, yeah, to be fair, you know, we've got not a lot in common with, you know, Southwark Coastal, Ipswich, etc. You know, if we had a you know, a West Suffolk unitary, we could work with folk in Cambridge, etc., etc. And I think, you know, to be fair, that would be the best of a bad deal. But at the end of the day, it always comes down to the big, you know, elephant in the room: how much money comes with this devolution or what unitary deal, how much funding is there, you know, and that's, you know, the critical thing as far as I'm concerned. But you know, to me, you know, people fought long and hard for their say locally. To give it away to some sort of mayoral authority, you know, where, you know, the people of this town have less say, I think would be a bad move.
I think, to me, it depends on how this is divvied up, from one of the best words. My understanding is there's going to be a mayoral authority, like a Metro Mayor sort of thing, cover a regional, on a regional basis. Yet within that there will be unitary authorities of a smaller nature. So in one respect, stuff that is dealt with at county level will be a little bit more local, because those areas will be smaller. But what the mayor will actually handle, I don't know. One question: would this affect parish councils? I mean, you're still going to need parish councils, aren't you?
Parish councils get 3 mentions in the white paper, and particularly around increasing powers that were set out in the Localism Act. So the right to bid, for instance, they actually changed to be a right to buy, which would be interesting to see how that actually works out. In other places where there's been unitary, then the concern about loss of voice, which Councillor Brown talked about, quite often gets converted into what's called double devolution, where effectively a lot of services and assets are taken off the balance sheet of the new unitary council and goes onto the balance sheet of the parish councils. Sometimes that's great, and the reason that Councillor Mason mentioned, I knew a bit about this, is because I've just completed my degree, honours degree, and my dissertation was on the impact of double devolution, unitary, etc. So I've been studying it all year, and yeah, the vast majority of parish councils are very pleased that they've been able to grab in a fire sale, it was described down in Cornwall, loads of assets that the chances are that the original district and county councils would never have handed over. But they, when the principal authorities found themselves really strapped for cash, then the assets, millstones, were all offloaded, so that the struggle to run these services and run things like public toilets is a classic example, that all got offloaded en masse to parish councils because they cost money but they don't generate any money, and that problem has moved from the taxpayers of Cornwall to the taxpayers of Newquay and the taxpayers of wherever. So yes, there is obviously the whole point of unitary authority is economies of scale, but those economies of scale can often then be completely undone by the fact that all the assets then get spread back out again, and the increase in the precepts probably dwarfs for any individual household what would have been done if actually they'd kept everything and enjoyed the economies of scale. So there's 2 things: there's a democratic voice, and then the actual ability to know who's going to run the services, and will you lose the economies of scale?
Yeah, I mean, a issue to me is the cost of the social care, health care currently borne by the county council. If you are split up, then it might affect some areas more adversely. No,
those sorts of things wouldn't be, because you wouldn't have the law isn't going to change to give powers of social care to parish and town councils.
No. I mean more unitary authorities. Councillor Burns.
I think Councillor Brown mentioned something, and there's been mentioned already about in Suffolk alone. I remember the last proposal was Norfolk and Suffolk, which was an absolute disaster. And I sat through. I was on the scrutiny committee at County Council, and we written to officers who'd come up with this proposal. 10,000 people want a mayor. And when I looked through the data, no, they didn't. 8,000 people didn't want the mayor, but you'd actually falsified the figures, basically, for want of a better word. And I said so at the meeting, because I got the data off them. I still got it at home. And so I don't believe anything that happens at that level. Certainly we wouldn't want a Norfolk-Suffolk thing, because the next thing we'd do would be government from Norwich, not from Ipswich, or somewhere up there, worse still, Great Yarmouth, or even further afield, you know. If you're going to have this sort of thing, we have to look west towards Cambridge. You know, we're only a mile from the Cambridge border, sat in this room, and I think that's where we should be looking. Pre-74 we had West Suffolk and East Suffolk, which worked, I understand it, pretty well. Obviously we had the Open District Council as well, but which itself worked pretty well. And maybe, I've always said we should declare UDI and go it alone here. So I tend to do that. There are some things, I looked at it today, and there are some things you could argue are good, but if the councils, the big county councils had already stepped up to the mark, we shouldn't be in some of the mess we are in already, because they've quietly just got rid of those things and did lower councils right away down to parish councils to do the work. In terms of what Councillor Mason said about January, from what I read the white paper, there is no public consultation in all of this. It's only going to be stakeholders, as I understood it. Mm-hmm. That's the only word I said. I searched for the word public, I couldn't even see the word public, which worries me intensely, that it's a rush through policy. I can't believe this was thought of more than a couple of months ago, this big countrywide thing. Unless there is the individual councils themselves saying, this is what we want to do. And that'll only be at county level. The district councils are not going to vote for their own demise, I can see that. So I don't know what we as a council do, but it's not us. I think it's the districts are the ones that are going to be got rid of. And they're our local, or supposedly our local representatives in this area. So I don't know where we go from here.
I don't think there's any type of changing boundaries, so if anything it's going to be contained within the administrative areas we've got at the moment, so I can't see it slipping across to Cambridge. I think it'll be solely contained within Norfolk and Suffolk.
Well, I don't know. Do you think of the LEP? The Cambridge LEP is no longer around. That covered Haverhill as well as the one on the east, or whatever that was called.
There may be be another sort of like business thing that's going to cover the area, like say like the Greater Cambridge Partnership and things like that.
Oh no, please not.
I mean, without doubt, the devil will be in the detail of the business plan that will be put forward to Jim McMahon. I think an awful lot of fears about things like representation, we kind of need to be factored into that business plan, and I think we probably all have a part to play, whether at district council and a county council, to talk about those fears of representation. Currently there's 70 odd members at Suffolk County Council. Other councils that have gone unitary have increased.
140 at Buckinghamshire.
140 at Buckinghamshire. And so whilst that would be a problem in Endeavour House, but increasing members, you wouldn't necessarily need to change the boundaries as such, but you could potentially double up members within districts, not unlike, for example, hiking myself for the Canada district. I think there's other issues regarding localism and making local decisions made by local people. Remember, we're not talking about just West Suffolk, we're talking about the 5 district councils, and the district councils have properties, obviously, in each of those districts. And I still think there'll be a part to play for local planning decisions to be made within the old districts, even if it's under a Suffolk unitary banner. Ultimately, we're all voting, all turkeys voting for Christmas if you're a district councillor or a county councillor, because the county council will cease to exist, and then there'll be this new unitary. So the concerns regarding representation, I think when we look at the business plan, whether you get a chance to see it at West Suffolk, and I'll certainly get a chance to see it, I think it's really, what are those concerns about localism and representation, and what can we do to try and minimise that loss? Because there will be a reduction in the amount of and I like the idea of having local champions. I like the idea of having lots of district councillors. I've enjoyed being a district councillor. You know, the more people that we have championing our communities, the better. Going unitary, to some extent, I think almost professionalises the role of being a councillor. I mean, as a triple hatter myself at the moment, I'm overwhelmed sometimes by the sheer quantity of things that come across my desk. And, you know, for a lot of members, doing that full range of council services from West Suffolk to Suffolk County Council, you know, it's going to be quite something actually wanting to become a unitary councillor, because, yeah, it's certainly a challenge. I don't want to talk for too long. I just wanted an opportunity to say it out there, because decisions, and I totally agree about timings, but because of the local elections in May, if it isn't submitted by mid-January, then the local elections will go ahead. And I think, you know, I think it's a shame that we seem to be working at pace. I've seen an email by Cliff Waterman today, seemingly kind of in favour of these discussions. I hear what you're saying about East and West, but I'm not entirely sure what that means, because of course Mid-Suffolk would end up probably part of West Suffolk, because Ipswich is so large, the coastal area would become one unitary, and there's some discussions, actually they're not probably big enough to be able to, for those 2 unitaries to be able to coexist.
White paper said 500,000, but it would look at different offers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we wait to see pen and paper. If anybody has any thoughts and they want to email me, because I am obviously going to be sat in meetings, I'm sure others will be sat in meetings as well. If you want that representation, I'm more than happy to carry that forward.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, boundary-wise, I see it reverting back to pre-74, so East and West, so that shouldn't be too difficult. I mean, but the other thing you did touch on, Joe, that does really concern me is that you can have unitary councillors and a lot of people that have got, you know, work, businesses, etc., are not going to be able to do that role anymore. So I think I would even, you know, put myself forward, and I think, you know, and there'd be a lot of other people that have got businesses or other interests. You know, all you're going to get really is retired people or, you know, professional councillor types, you know, which is, you know, that'd be a big hit for democracy. So, but I think, you know, the main thing is that really gets to me is that it's rushed, and the public aren't being consulted enough. And that's, you know, we're here to represent the public, and yeah, I think that, you know, what they want is really, really, really key.
I think somebody mentioned earlier about local decisions being made by local people. I think East Suffolk, didn't they have 2 planning committees, one for the north?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so I don't see why that couldn't be sort of done in a bigger authority.
So we did propose that when we had the thing, but that was rejected by officers.
Yeah.
Too unwieldy that we have a north and south planning committee.
Yeah, we did fight for that when there's the merge between Forest Heath and St
Can you imagine it?
Yeah. Anybody else like to contribute? Thank you very much. Thanks for bringing that up, Councillor Mason. Interesting times we live in. We'll see where that takes us. Is there any questions anybody's got on Councillor Mason's report? Lovely, thank you. 6D then is District Council's reports. Anybody else bring anything up? Yeah, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, hot off the press, it's come back from the overall scrutiny about, mainly about local bus services. I did garner as many people's views on Haverhill around this area, and I did feed that into the discussions. But to be fair, what I took away from it, and I mean everyone that should have been in the room was in the room, Simon Bennett, the whole crowd were in there, so but at the end of the day it's all about money. But I think the big take was that everyone there said that we need to lobby our MPs and we need to get more money, and I think that's one of the recommendations. And everyone's fighting for a slice of that pie. I brought up all the things around town service bus, etc., etc. But listen to other councillors. Everyone is virtually in the same boat. And it all basically went wrong in 1985 when devolved bus services. It's all right in towns where there's a lot of people competing for the same routes where there's a lot of people, but in rural areas it just hasn't worked. But it's quite shocking really that you think this has been going on for 40 years and no one's, whatever persuasion, no one's really grasped the nettle and realised that for 75% of the country bus services aren't working. So there was a lot of takes from the meeting. There's going to be some more regular meetings, lobby MPs, etc., etc. But I say, I'll just to give you that little heads up.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's subject's been raised with me recently as well. The fact that people get a bus into town, but they can't get a bus back again. So they end up paying for a taxi. And people can't afford to keep doing that.
Just a quick one on that. Your point, I did ask around the reimbursement if your bus doesn't turn up. That's down to the bus companies. Unfortunately.
What's worth the try?
So it's but they sort of looked and just went. So it used to happen, but.
Deregulations, we've gone from basically a public monopoly to a private monopoly, haven't we? Really. Anybody else got any questions?
With private monopolies, you've got the shareholders, haven't you?
And to be fair, bus companies were there, and they're trying their best. They said, we'll put on a bus anywhere that we can make money. We're here to make money. We can't subsidise areas and
Suffolk County
make money. They've got to make money to pay their drivers. They've got to pay their drivers even, etc., etc. Buy new buses. But Suffolk County Council haven't got them, as Joe will tell you. I mean, they spend. I never realised they spend £55 million a year on their statutory buses. That's getting kids to school that they need to get to school, send children to go to their education. So it's over £1 million a week they're spending, and the little bit of the pie that's left for community bus service, etc., is absolutely tiny. So, and all the governments over the last few years since the banking crisis have taken money away from councils, and that's one of anything they don't need to provide, they can't provide anymore. So it isn't the council, it's the Suffolk County Council's fault. It's whatever government.
It started earlier than that. It started in the 80s, taking
money
away from
originally,
councils.
But I say councils up until 2008 did have a bit more money than they have now. So
it just got drastically worse, didn't it?
Thank you. District councillors. Okay. Councillor Smith.
I was just going to mention, I've had quite a few complaints about Crowland Road, about the situation there with parking and everything and traffic and incidents that occur down that road because of road rage incidents where people can, refuse to back up and what have you. So I've got about 3, in the last couple of months I've had about 3 people come to me concerned. I mean, they've spoken to me originally about a planning proposal which was then withdrawn. They've still got all these other concerns. So I was just wondering if anyone's got any ideas or knows of what's been talked about in the past with regard to traffic down Crowland Road, and any ideas about what we might approach highways with, or through Joe.
Yeah, I did forward a request or two.
I'm happy for Councillor Bowes to go before me.
Thanks, John. This has been subject to numerous conversations with residents and everything else. The trouble is, it's a strategic north-south route through the town, because when the Queen Street, for example, is shut, there's not many places you can go, and I've said this before, it's all because we're a medieval town, not a Norman town, which has a bit like Bury is a Norman town. There's not a lot you can do about it. We don't have right turn from Withersfield Road into there. Yes, there is traffic, but it is the parking. Primarily the houses were built with no parking provision. These are Victorian type houses or Edwardian houses. And people will have 2, 3, 4 cars parked out there. All the vehicles that are parked. I drove up there today on the way to the Clements, and I was quite astounded at nearly 11 o'clock in the morning how many vehicles were parked outside. It's not as if they've gone to work or anything, and I don't believe they are people working in town, because it's the same cars at night time. Maybe a few more as well. I don't know what you can do about it. It's all you can do is, people just have to drive sensibly. I mean, I go up there, I especially if I'm coming from Withersfield Road, I look up the road, make sure there's no one coming down and pull out. Equally coming the other way. I mean, it's just sensible driving, I think. But what you can do about parking, I don't think you can do anything. I mean, if you started thinking about putting double lines down there, then residents would be up in arms. If you thought about resident parking, you've got to remember that you get 2 parking permits per property. And if everyone took those parking permits up, you wouldn't have enough space for the vehicles that are being given permits, as we see in places like Eden Road and Waverley Terrace, all those sort of things. It's difficult.
Yeah.
So do you want to come back here?
Yeah, sorry, I'll come back. One of the residents said that she believed that people that work at the council offices park there.
I'm not aware of.
Not on Crowland Road, on Downs Crescent,
Right.
that has been an issue in the past.
Okay.
And there have been an agreement that by the council officers that workers there wouldn't, I don't know, Downs Crescent. If that's happened again, that should be relayed to us, and so we can make those other representations to Haverhill House to try and prevent. But I think that's more Downs Crescent rather than Crowland Road.
I don't think the one of the problems is the fact that it's a 3-hour maximum parking lower down Slade, isn't it? If you're working there all day, what do you do?
So I entirely sympathise with residents. I've been approached many times. I'm not being approached anymore, and that's probably why it's now coming to other members. It's incredibly thorny, and I think there's not much more I can add to what Councillor Burns said. It is an arterial road through town. Whether a weight limit could be explored for that road, that could be explored, but of course, if you've got a DIY project and you've got Wicks doing a delivery, or whether that would, the weight limit would be only the section between Withersfield Road and the entrance into Downs Crescent to prevent. But other than that, I've talked with officers about making it a one-way. They predominantly go off an evidence base. If there isn't damage to property, if there isn't damage to people and harm, it's offensive talking about this because, of course, we're waiting for somebody to get hurt. But, you know, council spending money on highways improvements, you know, I'm after a mini roundabout at the end of Ansuckling. They're just not going to do it because they're saying the traffic flows don't justify having that. And so councils tend to go off data for their decisions and not the appearance of safety. Of course, along Withersfield Road, we have many houses that their front door is quite close to the road, and it's quite intimidating living in those houses, I'm sure, with having cars whizzing past. Crowley Road is just crazy, and the amount of cars, there isn't enough spaces on Downs Crescent, let alone Crowley Road, for all the vehicles. So it's highly problematic. I can't offer any comfort other than I understand their sympathies, and you know, it's something that I keep coming back to. And other than a possible weight limit in that lower section, but I'm happy to go back to officers to discuss that. But it probably now, in the financial year, we're probably waiting to have discussions on that probably after May now. If that makes sense.
Is there any...
Well, I've forwarded some of the concerns to you as the county representative. So if you could, yes, still keep talking to officers about it, that would be great.
Definitely, more than happy to do that.
So is there any evidence, anecdotal or otherwise, about how many people turn right into Crowden Road from Withersfield Road? Because to my mind, that's not very well signposted. That is not a right turn.
So it happens a lot. I've seen a police car turn right into Crowden Road from Withersfield Road. So, you know, I think there are things to do to make that increasingly more difficult, whether there's some sort of narrow central reservation with bollarded. But of course, all of that
the island is shaped so that you're not supposed to have to turn into it, right, isn't it?
It's not quite shaped enough, is it? But the question is money, and the next county councillor for that area, I would say that should be one of the things they might want to have a look at in terms of funding some improvements to that junction.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 6E then is Town Councillor's Matters Report. We've had Councillor Burns' report through. Is there anything like to add to that at all? Any questions on Councillor Burns or any other? Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, I think it shouldn't go unsaid that Councillor Burns, for a number of years, has been wanting to get the town centre signage right, and I've been working with John, trying to get officers at Southwark County Council to acknowledge a mistake was made in the TRO for the High Street. It looks like we're there. I'm going to ask for a copy of what actually is going to go in that TRO to make sure that what Councillor Burns and myself, indeed the Town Council, will want for the High Street. But after an awful lot, I can't emphasise enough the amount of effort that it goes into trying to get some of these things done. And thank you to Councillor Burns for his persistence, and it helped me keep going, and hopefully that's a positive outcome.
Thank you. So, item 6F then is the public forum. Member of the public welcome to make statements or questions at this time. Anything for you, Mr. Nick?
Yes, Chair. I'd just like to ask a question. If the government go ahead with the plan that they're proposing to change and bring in mayors, how will it affect our local town council?
I think,
well, obviously it's a white paper, so it's not actually, it's what they would like to do. So there's 2 tiers of unitary authority being proposed. It's only the strategic authorities that would have mayors, so it depends whether or not there's an appetite, say, for a Suffolk unitary or a east-west split or whatever it might be. And what we were discussing was what Suffolk County Council might like. It was mentioned earlier that the county councils the County Council network welcomed the white paper. The District Council network did not welcome the white paper, but that's everyone just defending their corners. So there'd be a mayor if people wanted to have a mayor, and if you had, I don't really understand it, I can only pass it on, but basically what they're saying is, for extra powers, there's this feeling there needs to be a named person who has those powers alone, and that they can't be stopped by councillors from getting on with the job.
So really, what you're saying that we wouldn't be able to retain the town council?
Oh no, there's nothing to do with town councils. It's interesting, they talk about unitary, and they just completely forget about the fact that we're not in a two-tier county, we're in a three-tier county.
Right.
But there's also sloppy language around when they talk about local councils, because we're a local council.
Yes.
We're not a principal authority. The principal authority is the district and the county.
Yeah.
So the language is mixed up. And when they talk about town halls, they're not talking about this place, they're talking about West Suffolk House and Endeavour House.
Right.
So the language is extremely confusing at the moment. Hopefully it will be ironed out when it gets to debate.
We've always had this problem with people not understanding what levels of the council do, and this is not really helping things, to tell you the truth.
The central government can't, what help have we got?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 7 then is the Mayor's report. Happy to take questions. If not, we can just move on. Thank you very much.
Oh, no Christmas, so...
Item 8, One Haverhill Partnership. I don't think there's been meetings since then.
There hasn't, no. We're still working on the business planning, which I mentioned at the last meeting. So that's gone on. Hopefully that was some useful. That feedback from the Job Centre Plus came through the business planning for One Haverhill. Just a reminder how useful One Haverhill is. Because I would never have had that conversation and never been able to alert them. No. They didn't know.
And I read that letter out.
So the next meeting is in the new year,
16th of January at the Epicentre.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry,
Just really quickly, if devolution does go ahead, I think for One Haverhill will almost have a renewed purpose in terms of needing to provide that strong voice that that it can provide. It will be interesting to see what opportunities One Haverhill will be able to explore should devolution go ahead.
Thank you. Item 9, financial matters. A is to authorise the following payments list as per the agenda, proposed by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Hanlon. All those in favour? Thank you. 9B is the budget briefing 2025-26 to consider the working document presented by the clerk and adopt as first draft. So hopefully you'll have a chance to read that. Colin, would you like to give a bit of background?
Well, so hopefully you've all read it. I think the special mention, honourable mention, goes to Councillor Andre. You'll recall that Councillor Andre, Councillor Burns and Councillor Davison agreed to support me in basic proofreading the budget and looking for any changes. And I thank, obviously, Councillor Davison out of the country, but I thank Councillor Andre and Councillor Burns for their contributions, both of which were very useful. But Councillor Andre spotted that I had programmed up, the cell is full of programming, the worksheet is full of programming, and at the very last minute when I was actually writing this document and going through, I put in some of the things that councillors talked about as as their aspirations, and I decided to program up a cell to pick up from a projects list, and I added these things to the projects list. What I hadn't noticed, and Councillor Andre picked up, was that I'd previously programmed street furniture to pick up what was in there, because it used to be just the grip bins. So I left that formula in that cell and also put it into a different cell. And so every time I added a councillor project into one cell, it was also adding into another to a tune. It made a difference of £37,000. It would have got picked up eventually, no doubt, but I hadn't spotted it at all when I wrote the original report. So this is now different figures. The impact is 2%. Councillor Andre picking that up.
Yeah, you had to say percent before, wasn't
It
it?
was 8.5 now to 6.5. So yes, excellent, thank you very much. So that's where we're now at. So things aren't quite as bad as they looked by any stretch of imagination. They're still higher than we hoped, but that is the employer's national insurance contribution. And it's particularly, and I'm sure any of you who are involved with anyone who's in business and employing lots of people, it's that reduction from the threshold down to 5,000. That means, you know, half our staff, there was no employer's national insurance liability, and now it's for practically all our staff. We now have to pay, and that's like £600 per person straight off. So it's made a huge difference to us. I hope the people at Haverhill will understand it, but you know, I'm happy to answer questions.
I think last year, like that's not just sales, that we kept it deliberately low. I understand that we knew it was going to be a little bit higher this year.
Yeah, we hope 4.21.
Yeah,
we'd hoped.
yeah. But, sorry, Councillor Mason.
To be honest, it was just an observation. I'll try and avoid not making this political. I had a chat with Henry Wilson at Reach, and the national insurance contributions was going to cost them an extra £18,000 a year, which, when you consider how much fundraising Reach do, has implications. And if you think of how many charitable organisations are out there, it isn't unsubstantial. I don't find the figures particularly excessive. We still are at a time when inflation is still an issue, and I don't look at those figures as seem reasonable.
Councillor Burns.
Yeah, I think Roger beat me to it. I think I'll blame filming the pantomime, not being able to get to it. Just one question, Colin. I forgot to mention this to you before when we were discussing this. The tax base.
Yeah.
Did they come up with revised figures at all?
No, as far as I'm aware.
We thought they were maybe a bit low in terms of.
Well, you can see
considering the type of
pattern.
houses. Yeah.
Obviously, this takes into account the 100%.
Yeah.
And so they made an assumption, 100%. I guess that's what you're discussing this week, is it, or next week?
No, this tomorrow.
Yeah,
tomorrow, yeah. So it'll be signed off tomorrow, I would expect, the tax base. To be honest, it'll go through. I can't imagine the panic that'd be caused if you rejected it. But unfortunately, this just reflects I think some of the kind of the transient population. I'm still not convinced when I look at the numbers of people voting. The number of people there was a what do they call it? A kind of survey, a special survey they did to try and get the more people onto the electoral roll. So literally going around knocking on doors. And that made quite a big difference to the electoral roll. I'm not convinced that Anglia Revenue have done the same thing, because I think it's very easy in Haverhill, where you've got a very large number of private rented accommodation, and I think Councillor Brown, you were saying the number of HMOs in Haverhill.
It's enormous.
Well, you only have to answer the door and say you're the only person living there, or just register one person there, when in fact there's lots more, and suddenly lots of households are not paying the full whack because they get single occupant discount. So I don't understand why we have such a huge number of households that get council tax relief, and I'm suspicious of the numbers, but they are what they are.
Yeah, and there's a pattern, isn't there, that it goes up all
Well,
the time.
and it should do, because there's loads of house building, but the house building, the number of houses being built is going up at a steeper rate than the tax base,
Yeah.
which suggests it's either people who live in crowded accommodation in Haverhill are now moving out into their own houses within Haverhill, so the population stays the same, but there are more actual dwellings occupied, and therefore you might get some more people. You know, if you move out and buy a flat, you're a single occupant of that flat. But I don't know. I'm just being suspicious.
Yeah, until we do a concerted piece of work, then we're not going to know, are we, Councillor Mason?
One of the questions Colin, whether you could shed some light. It would appear, I think it's likely that the local council tax reduction will remain at 100% for this coming financial year. That's my gut feeling. But that this will probably be the last year that it will be set at 100%. How do you think? How does that impact? You know, the amount of money that comes into Haverhill Town Council.
It's £1,000 per 1%.
So if it wasn't continued, you know, how you know, what sort of effects would we see?
Well, when it went from 95 to 100%, that cost us £5,000. If the town council got the relief, which the government says is built into, and this takes us right back to 2014 when I joined the council, 2012 before that when you were first campaigning, the government says that the relief money for parishes is wrapped up in the central support grant, but I guess it may not necessarily be actually identified within it, so we don't see that. But if everybody, it's not realistic, but if everybody in Haverhill was paying full whack equivalent of Band D, there would be £100,000 more coming into the Haverhill Town Council, or to be more accurate, we would be able to reduce council tax.
Yeah, so I've always argued that, you know, with council tax relief, it's a great thing, but it adversely affects those towns which got the less wealthy, should we say. But then I've argued that with the officers of West Southwark, and they say, well, no, it's all covered. I don't know how. It's just a bit smoke and mirrors, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, well, you could argue that money, where they're not paying it, it goes directly to the people that need it most in one way. So, it means that the town council and what we're able to do suffers a bit. But yeah, and it goes back to what Colin was saying around what I was saying around HMO inspections. That would be one of the benefits of doing that, because I know that there's a huge amount of HMOs in Haverhill that they don't even know about, and it's not just, you know, 4 people living in a 3-bedroom house. It's sometimes 8, 10 people, you know, working in different factories, you know, sharing 2 to 3 to a room. So, I looked through everything. So, Colin, thanks for doing that. You always look to see somewhere where, you know, the town council could, you know, save some money, but it's always pennies, you know, whatever. You know, when you look at what the town council does, the arts centre, the zone, you only have to, you know, read Karen's report every couple of months that we do, and the good work that they do for really vulnerable people, etc., etc. I'm not being funny. At the end of the day, the town council seems to do 75% of everything for everyone. You know, we're like the beating heart of the town. Southwark County Council do their statutory stuff and a bit extra. You know, the district, you know, they try as well, all with limited budgets. We have got, you know, high town council precepts, but, you know, we do really try and, you know, do our best with the money that we've got for the people of the town. So, you know, thanks Colin for the work on it. You know.
Thank you. Well, we're looking to adopt this as a first draft, so we're looking for a proposal. Has anybody else got anything else on that? Councillor Andre, proposing, seconded by Councillor Hanlon. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much, Colin.
Those other councils don't do a Christmas fair, do they?
9C then is accounts package. Consider adopting the scribe cloud-based accounting and booking system. We've got a item attached to the agenda. I think we've had a chance to read through it. Colin, do you want to give us a reason as to why? I'm guessing it's to save money.
Well, it does save a great deal of money. We can show you the numbers there. Not only do we think it's a better system, notwithstanding the slight issue over the difference between income expenditure and receipts and payments basis. But if you're not nerdy about accounting, don't worry about it, to be honest. It can be got over, and the councils we've talked to, particularly Felix Stowe, they told us how they get around it after Kerry and I discussed how we could get around it with Scribe, and Felix Stowe actually just described exactly what we were thinking of doing, is exactly what they do already. But cost-wise, it's half the price to begin with. The budget, by the way, that draft budget that you've just signed off as a first draft, is based on the Rialtas 6,200.
So does that bring down the council?
It does bring down the council tax very slightly.
Councillor Burns.
Well, Colin and I have discussed this quite. It's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. I've been trying to. There's Rialtas itself has a desktop version and a cloud-based version.
It doesn't have a cloud-based version.
Well, no, I'm going to clarify that. They promised us 2 years ago in a discussion I had with them that they were going to go cloud-based, because it means that we don't have to support it from making sure it works, make sure it gets backed up, all that sort of stuff. But of course, as Colin says, that hasn't happened in 2 years since they sold the company to somebody else. Then obviously Scribe has come along, and also, more importantly, the cloud-based version, their costing they keep quoting is astronomical, you know, and they're not developing the desktop version anymore. That's stopped developing. So anything new we're just not getting. So going to Scribe from not only a cost saving, it just does more. It just means that people, if they are working from home, they can do it easily. And I'm sure over time it will, like most accounting systems that I've been involved in with over the years, including ones I've actually written, they get enhanced. Where Rialtas has just sat still for at least 2 years. So I propose that we do that.
Thank you. Councillor Bates, seconded. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. Item 10 then is a review of policies, to review and re-adopt policies in relation to A, the health and safety policy, and B, the safeguarding policy. I believe these are just basically bringing the documents up to date, are they?
So basically it's just making sure that the names are still correct for the officers who have various duties, changing the dates on first aid certificates. So the actual content, the policy hasn't changed at all, but as I said in my email, apologies I didn't send it out earlier, I intended to, but basically funders quite often want to see particularly our safeguarding policy, and if it hasn't got a review date in the within 12 months, then they put a face. I mean, West Suffolk, for instance, will throw safeguarding policy back at you if it's not been revised within the year. So it's basically nothing's actually changed within.
Yeah, that's right.
Who actually reviews this, Colin? Do we? Gary
goes through and reviews it. He's qualified, so.
Are we allowed to do that? Are we
Oh yeah. Everyone does their own policy.
Okay.
Thanks. Councillor Andre.
On the safeguarding one, item 5, allegations made against a member of staff or volunteer or councillor, for some reason the concerns regarding councillors have been directed to District Monitoring Officer.
Yeah.
To exclude the LADO seems to me to be dangerous.
Case law dictates the only body that can deal with a complaint against a councillor is through the monitoring officer process. There was a case in the West Country where a councillor was accused of bullying, and the council took the councillor through their internal policy for grievances, etc., and that ended up in the High Court, and the council got basically had to pay massive damages to the councillor, and it established case law that no matter what the issue is, it has to go through the monitoring officer, and there can't be any sanctions or anything like that set in until the monitoring officer processed through the standards committee that's reported back.
I'm not stressing for one moment that the monitoring officer shouldn't be involved and shouldn't deal with it, but I do think it's significant that the LADO is advised when a matter is raised. The LADO really is the focus for this kind of safeguarding policy.
Yes, and I agree with that, but obviously in terms of any sort of action against, unless it was a criminal case, that's a different matter, but it's interesting actually, that I was listening to the Radio 4 this morning, the discussion with the Bishop of Newcastle about the kind of issues in Essex that the Archbishop of York is kind of embroiled in now, and appears to have been caught by, I think, some slightly ropey legal advice personally, that because that person had already been through disciplinary for the offences they're accused, that they couldn't reopen the case against them. Personally, I think I would have done it anyway and got taken to court, because I'm not entirely sure how many paedophiles would take you to court. It probably wouldn't be a clever idea.
Alleged.
Sorry?
Alleged.
No. They spent 5 years in jail. And they're dead. I agree with you totally. Is there something you wanted to change in any way, or?
Is it on the other one, Colin? That's his help. Is it on the
Sorry,
same
I've done the wrong one. I thought I clicked on that.
Page 4.
Yeah.
I'd like to see also in there.
Councillor Smith, sorry.
I was just going to say, as it would be referred, any complaint would be referred to the monitoring officer if it was a case where she believed that LADO should be informed. Would that not happen? Or?
Well, I think, between the two of you, you raised an interesting challenge, because, again, I think with the recent church case, there was an awful lot of everyone assuming somebody else was doing something, and nobody was doing anything.
Right.
And the kind of the challenge coming out for all kind of managers and governance is that actually you can't assume somebody else is doing it. I think the Archbishop of Canterbury, basically, because it had been referred to the police, thought that was job done, and he was criticised for a failure to be inquisitive enough to find out exactly what happened. So it was almost the same thing here.
He'd only been told that it had been referred to the police. He hadn't done it himself.
No, absolutely. So in that case, I'll make an adjustment on this to make sure that it's absolutely clear that the last bullet point doesn't exclude the rest. So I think also may cover it, but I'll adjust it slightly. Thank you for raising that.
Councillor, was there something else you wanted to add? Was there something else?
No,
No.
thank you very much.
Thank you. So with that amendment then, should we take the two together, do we?
Yeah, you can take
Yeah,
it.
just 10A and 10B, a proposal of Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Smith, raise their hand. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Item 11, adoption of committee reports. 11A is the planning committee to move the adoption of the minutes of the meeting held on 3rd of December 2024, and then recommendations tabled in. Proposed by Councillor Hanlon, second by Councillor Andre. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Just on this time. Item 12 is the actions taken under delegated powers, which were none. Item 13 is the date of the next meeting, which is Tuesday, the 28th of January 2025. No, that's a Tuesday. And item 14 is the closure, and it is 21.